After a season full of unforced errors and horrendous strategy calls, Mattia Binotto finally stepped down from his role as the Ferrari team principal. But while the Tifosi are hoping for a positive change with Fred Vasseur, the rival teams aren't too sure about that. Why? Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about Red Bull team advisor Helmut Marko's comments about Binotto's departure and more. So keep watching. First off, Ferrari is worse off without Binotto. It would be an understatement to say that the Scuderia had a difficult 2022. The year was such a roller coaster ride that even seasoned fans, who have grown accustomed to the team's tendency to screw up, were surprised by just how many errors they made. From botched pit stops to strategies that didn't make any sense, the Ferrari went through it all. And after starting the season off strongly with Charles Leclerc in the lead of the championship, they ended the year with the Monegasque barely finishing second place ahead of Sergio Perez. Now, of course, this wasn't the first time this had happened to the team. In fact, it's sort of become a Ferrari thing at this point. But of course, with this dire situation, the fans were out in full force with their torches and pitchforks. So heads were gonna roll. That said, even though the management in Maranello ultimately decided to replace the team principal Mattia Binotto with Sauber's Frederick Vasseur, there's still an aura of uncertainty around the outfit. As a matter of fact, even rival teams don't quite understand the thought process behind the change. Red Bull's Dr. Helmut Marko, for instance, went as far as to say that the team will be worse off without the Italian. Speaking with Automotor und Sport, he talked about how Ferrari may have made a mistake by replacing Binotto, who, according to him, is an excellent technician and politician. Also, for him, Scuderia's problems were never going to get fixed by simply replacing the team principal, and instead, a more subtle change was needed. Up next, Binotto was overwhelmed by Ferrari. Now, even though the fans are pleased about Binotto's departure, they shouldn't expect a lot to change at the Maranello outfit. After all, everyone else from the top strategist to all the engineers is still the same. What's more, most people don't realize that Binotto may not have been the problem at all because, well, the issues didn't start with his arrival at the top. For instance, even during Maurizio Arrivabene's reign, we saw just how dysfunctional the team was at times. So it's definitely not an issue with the team principal. Not to mention, the Italian was not a newcomer by any stretch of the imagination either. As a matter of fact, he'd been on the team since the 90s and headed the Scuderia's engine division during their dominant run with Michael Schumacher in the early 2000s. Like, he definitely knew what he was doing. Besides, those media deflections that made him seem like a clueless guy were probably him trying to shield his team members. Though rumors did suggest that his relationship with Charles Leclerc wasn't great, so perhaps Vasseur was needed, especially considering his history with the Monegasque. According to Marko, though, simply bringing in a new sporting director at his side to support him with the strategy and other stuff would have been enough for a massive improvement. And the reason why he wasn't doing so well was simply that he was overwhelmed by his task. Marko also talked about how Fred Vasseur isn't gonna fare any better than the Italian, because at the end of the day, he's gonna have the same overwhelming workload. Not to mention, Mercedes and Red Bull could benefit from this shakeup. Formula One can be a cruel sport sometimes. One wrong move and you're out for the count. Plus, even making these small changes can sometimes result in a lack of focus for the entire team, which, of course, makes you lose a few tenths on track. Seriously, unlike other sports where the off-season is a time to relax and gather your wits, It's probably the most important time of the year in F1. After all, that's when the majority of the work is going into the car for next year. So if you bring in new leadership halfway through the R&D process, that can have massive implications for the season ahead. Not to mention, just that disruption of workflow can sometimes be enough for your team to lose that sense of direction and miss out on some crucial gains in the aero department. Oh, and yeah, Helmut Marko was asked about this as well. Guess what he said though? Now, he's one of those guys who love to stoke the flames of rivalry. So obviously, he said that both the Silver Arrows and his own team could end up benefiting from this shakeup within the Scuderia. How? Well, for him, it's all about maintaining that stability and continuity within the team. And to be fair, he's got a point here because Mercedes and Red Bull are both perhaps the most stable teams out there in terms of their management structure, which has also translated into some stellar success. Ferrari's volatile nature over the past decade, on the other hand, has only resulted in disappointment. Moving on, Martin Brundle also weighs in on the situation. Now, Helmut Marko's probably a bit biased in his assessment here, cause, well, he works for Red Bull, so of course he's gonna say his team's in a better position. Besides, it's not like they're playing catch-up anymore either, so they were always gonna start on the front foot. What's surprising though is just how many people seem to agree with him, at least those who aren't Ferrari fans. Former F1 driver and pundit Martin Brundle, for instance, also echoed the Austrian's thoughts and said that Binotto's exit probably has Mercedes and Red Bull smiling right now. According to him, continuity is everything, and the lack of consistency, which has plagued the Scuderia for many years at this point, is only going to prove to be another hurdle for them. What's more, he also talked about how the Italian should have been given more time with the team because at the end of the day, he was the one orchestrating their vision for 2023's car. So axing him now, halfway through the development process, could have some pretty grave consequences. He said that he's not sure why the prancing horse would choose to go for a whole month without a boss. After all, Binotto left at the start of December, and Vassar wasn't meant to step in until the new year. Having said that, we're sure almost half of that time is scratched anyway, due to the holiday break. Still, Brundle concluded that if he was a part of Mercedes or Red Bull, he'd be smiling right now. What's more, it's gonna be a tall order for Frederick Vassar. Alright, let's step back for a bit and see what the former Sauber boss would have to deal with at Maranello, cause Binotto isn't coming back. Well, for starters, he's gonna step into an already operational machinery, meaning he's the one who will have to adapt. Plus, since he's joining midway through the development process, he won't be able to implement his vision either. Oh, and Brundle also has the same belief, as according to him, it's going to be a tall order for the Frenchman to find his way, get established, and understand the inner workings of the team. Of course, he's been a part of Ferrari's customer outfit in Alfa Romeo, but that doesn't necessarily mean much when you're going into the thick of it. The F1 pundit also talked about how it's going to take some time to adapt, no matter who you are, unless you've already been a part of the team's fabric like Binotto was. Besides, this is such a fundamental change that it's hard to see how it won't destabilize them, at least in the short term. And in 2023, we shouldn't expect a dominant Ferrari at all, because everyone in Maranello will be slightly off balance with their thinking, so they'll be stuck in limbo for at least another year. That said, it's going to be fascinating to see just how well they develop throughout the year, as that was perhaps their biggest weakness under Binotto. Coming up, Fred Vassar isn't strong enough for the Ferrari job. Winning in Formula One doesn't necessarily mean being the fastest car on the grid. You've also got to play your cards right and strategize correctly, not to mention all the politics that come with it. And in that department, Ferrari has probably been the weakest top team out there, cause everyone else has some pretty strong figures at the top. Red Bull, for instance, has the cunning Christian Horner at its helm, while Mercedes has got the relentless Toto Wolff. The point is, the Scuderia bosses have just not been strong enough to really establish their own identity within the team. Instead, they're just in charge of running the team and making sure they're getting the best out of people. Then again, that's sort of been their strategy, hasn't it? Well, F1 journalist Ed Straw disagrees with that thought process, as according to him, the last thing Ferrari needed right now was someone who was just going to get their head down and work on the team. He said that what they really needed was a big heavyweight figure, like the other top teams, who could be more involved with the bigger picture stuff, like say the direction of the company. And it almost feels like they've gone the wrong way here. That said, the hierarchy at Ferrari wouldn't have allowed someone to be that strong anyway. Finally, Vassar could still prove everyone wrong. Let's get one thing straight. Fred Vassar is no slouch when it comes to managing a Formula One team. At Sauber, he helped build one of the best factory facilities and a wind tunnel on the grid. Plus, we've seen just how consistent Alfa Romeo's been under his reign. So we'd say it's a bit premature to judge him, as he hasn't even stepped into his role yet. What's more, he's an excellent operator when it comes to having great relationships within the team. Oh, and that was pretty clear from the way Charles Leclerc spoke about him as well. Now that he's coming to Ferrari though, we're sure he could take the Monegasque and Carlos Sainz to even greater heights, because he truly knows how to get the best out of his drivers. That being said, closing down that 205-point deficit to Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship from last year is going to be incredibly hard, so even a minor improvement in 2023 would do at this point. That's a wrap for this video. Did Ferrari make a mistake by sacking Binotto? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.